Mr. Mallick, first of all, my congratulations for in some way being a pioneer in this domain and trying to build a scale and impact. Because again, in recycling, we have a long way to go. As a country and as an ecosystem, we have a long way to go. And I'm glad we at BW Businessworld have embraced this domain and we've made a start in this domain. So my kudos to you. Mr. Mallick, my query to you would be that if you had to really think from a structural standpoint and not just think of Ramky, but think of the domain, and as the domain grows, you as a player will grow. What do you think the government and policymakers can do to really make sure that this domain gets a clear pathway, it gets encouragement, the policy enablement is of the positive kind? What do you think the policymakers, the budget is 15 days from now. So what is your advice to policymakers for this sector?
Yeah, I would actually, great question. And I think I great sort of connect to my last comment that I was making around enabling policies. I would say that there is already a beginning that has been made. I think our think tank, our policymakers are right on top of the scale of this opportunity. Of the 5 trillion economy that our Honorable Prime Minister has talked about, I articulated in my in my previous comments the $500 billion, $500 billion opportunity that is circular economy and recycling alone. And I think unlocking that would mean that you take EPR beyond plastics, where it is somewhat well defined, getting better defined, and e-waste again to a smaller degree, and take it to all commodities, where every manufacturer and every consumer knows that a polluter has to pay. And larger the pollution, larger is the tax. EPR is just an indirect tax. It's an environmental tax. And therefore, every manufacturer has a responsibility to ensure that its materials, end of life, after use, will be managed responsibly. So ensuring that EPR regulations scale to all other aspects of our waste composition, not just on plastics. Today, if you look at EPR, it is basically plastics, and within plastics also largely an FMCG thing. And the fact is EPR should and can cover all aspects of material flow in our economy. The second is obviously implementing these rules. So I think the rules have come, and more new rules are coming every day. We have saw the ELV rules come, draft rules come, the new plastic rules come, many other regulations are coming, which is great. How quickly they get enforced and implemented, I think it will be an important enabler, because it's not that we have forever. I mean, whichever city you might be, I'll give you examples of the Ghazipurs or the Deonars or these mountains of waste that are there in the city. So the problem is huge and we need to act today. And finally, I think the access to capital aspect. I think beyond just putting the responsibility on the industry and the consumer, I think structurally, as we have seen in many other parts of the world, if the government comes with policies that provide viability gap funding as well as access to lower cost capital to this particular sector, I think we will see significant movement and uptake.
Thank you so much. And by the way, Mr. Masood Mallick, I was doing research on you, and the first thing I ask anybody I meet is when their birthday. I also realize you're born on the Independence Day. It was easy in your case to go to your LinkedIn profile and get it from there, so we didn't have to struggle too much. But we at BW Businessworld, along with Sustain Labs Paris and Dr. Minya Chatterjee, started to rank India's largest companies on sustainability last year. This year is the second year. We'd like you to be involved with that. We're also coming up with an issue on the connect between the budget and the 5 trillion economy. How can the budget set us on that road, especially after 22 months of COVID? So we'd like to engage with you on that. My next question is, while there is an institutional response required from the government of India, and there is an institutional response from the participants in the economic growth, which are industries. And as I was preparing for my speech in the morning, I learned that there are 15 kinds of recycling that is possible. To put it simplistically, tell me what are the behaviors that individuals can do, which can then lead to, because small changes from 1.2 billion people, or even a small fraction of this 1.2 billion, can actually also, for example, as you know, last Saturday, when the first lockdown in this year was done, the PM2 in Delhi was 70, 80. In Noida, it was 30. And this is from Delhi. 20 days back, the PM2 was 300 at an average. So clearly, just not having vehicles on the road can do that to you, right? Just not having vehicular pollution. And so what do you think are the things that we as individuals can do that we don't consciously realize that by those small acts, we can lead to a huge revolution in how we recycle our waste?
Yeah. So I think, again, a very great question. And in very simple words, you have articulated the two biggest enablers for this whole sector. And what I'm going to talk about is segregation at source. I think the segregation at source is absolutely the key. So you talked about 14 types of recycling. Today, our own recycling facilities today cover almost 45 commodities. So it is much more than that. But we are not asking for people to segregate waste into 45 commodities, not important. But the least that each one of us can do, me included, and we all have a long way to go in that respect, is gila and sukha, dry and wet. This one little magic step will completely, magically unlock the potential. And I think the key is what we did for Diwali crackers, through the schools and through the children, that has to be what has to be done.
So mindset change right at the...
Absolutely. And those societies, those cities, those institutions, those communities where this is being done, you will see, I mean, there was a great example one of the previous speakers gave of some condominiums in Gurgaon where there is there's a naming and shaming system for people who are not segregating. So this is one huge enabler. If we listen to our children who are far more environmentally aware and sensitive than we are, hand on heart, it is true. If you ask them, if you talk to them, you will hear it and you will understand it. If you just listen to them and let them take the lead, I think we have a great future. It took Europe 15 years to starting to make segregation at source work. We don't have that kind of time. We don't have 15 years to make this change. We only have a matter of order of magnitude lower time to transform ourselves. So I think in engaging with our schools and educational institutions to make this a mainstream movement is one enabler. The second is, I think, accountability. I think every city, every citizen should know, once I'm segregating it, once I'm making the effort to making it into dry and wet, what is happening to it? If you're going to combine it again and put it in the same dump site, then what was the point of educating me to segregate? So in two ways. One is in terms of awareness at home and segregating at home, and then ensuring accountability from our public representatives, municipal corporations, and service providers like me. Holding us accountable is, I think, the key enabler.
Thank you so much. So clearly, I mean, I'm just thinking structurally, and I keep saying we would normally do these conferences face-to-face, physically in a hotel, but given the situation on the ground, we've done it virtually and hope we can do. But I always say we need to have an action manifesto. So for example, sensitizing our households, the maid servants, the people in the kitchen, we all have house helps, of segregating it, people who collect it at that level. So doing a campaign for them and sensitizing them on how it impacts the environment is very important. You rightly said, through the grassroots mechanism at the entry level, in schools. And my daughter, who's a young adult, runs by the way, a recycling startup. And when she took it up 3 years back, I said, I didn't know it was such a big area. It can make such a huge impact. So I think you're right, the children are more sensitive about the environment, about recycling, about the consciousness towards environment. My last question is, I asked you is, the budget is around the corner. Do you expect some breaks from the government to be able to incentivize large manufacturing units and companies in this sector to be able to do what they do in a better way than what they do currently? Sometimes people like you are in this domain, not just because it's a business, but it's a calling, it's a mission, it's your purpose, right? So it's not about financial incentive. But having financial incentives can accelerate the process. So do you expect something from the budget?
Yeah, I think this budget is extremely important because I think this will be the first budget post Swachh Bharat 2 and post what I'm referring to as EPR 2.0, which is the next phase of EPR. And I think the translation of the intent of Swachh Bharat 2.0, EPR 2.0 into fiscal policy is through this budget. And therefore, there are a couple of key expectations that we have. The first one is that a lot of the current incentives have been withdrawn. Market development assistance for compost has just been withdrawn. Subsidy on energy from waste has been withdrawn. Some of the subsidy around a number of the technologies that were being employed for recycling materials, they have just been withdrawn by the finance ministry in the last few months. We are hoping that has been done in the context of a bigger, much more sort of holistic policy coming up. There needs to be a national policy on resource recovery and resource management. That national policy has to be holistic, cannot just deal with one or two commodities. It has to cover, a big part of the import bill of India, the resource footprint of India. And I think that is one key expectation that we have. And finally, I think it's very important that through the budget, a mandate is given to public sector banks to support these the recyclers. The fact is, I consider it a collective failing of all of us, and me and Ramky included, that there is only one unicorn in this space. Such a big problem, such a big opportunity, and there's only one company that can claim to have unicorn status. Why? We need 100 Ramkys, and we need 500 other companies who will make this ecosystem and make this change. That will only happen if access to capital is encouraged, and there the budget has a big role to play.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mallick. I hope some of the specific issues that you raised are addressed, and they act as a policy catalyst for enablement of this domain. And we know post-corona that what happens to the earth, what happens to the environment, what happens in another part of the world does impact everyone. So clearly we have to be more sensitive, and it has to become a part of our being as institutions, as business, to be able to bring in environment-friendly, recycling-friendly practices in our daily life and in our policy making. If we are sensitized, I think we'll make better choices, and we'll have a better environment and better earth, so to say, to live on. And sometimes we say we'll take care of the earth. I think that's a very egoistic statement. I think Mother Earth takes care of us. We just enjoy Mother Earth. So on this note, I'll thank you on behalf of BW Businessworld. This is the first year of this initiative. We've learned as a company and as a platform, we've learned a lot. And as we engage more and more with stakeholders in this ecosystem and have a dedicated team dedicated to this community from an editorial perspective, we'll be able to make a more connect between the business community and the recycling community, which has some overlaps, and the policymakers. So grateful to you for your time and for your inputs.